Welcome to Module 4 in the 2023 Test Security Training Series. IC's Office of Assessments has developed a series of training modules to prepare LEA Test Integrity Coordinators, LEA Assessment Managers, LEA Test Coordinators, and non-public school test coordinators for the Spring 2023 Statewide Assessment Administration. There are 6 required training modules. These modules are required for all LEA Test Integrity Coordinators, LEA Assessment Managers, LEA Test Coordinators, and non-public school test coordinators, including those responsible for access and alternate access, MSAA, DLM, DC Science, and PART. The modules follow the order of activities in the assessment coordination timeline. Upon the completion of all training modules, coordinators will need to complete a quiz and certification form verifying that they have viewed and understood all content. A score of 80% or higher out of 120 total points on the quiz will serve as the official attendance and completion of the 2023 Test Security Training. In Module 4, we will cover test administration, setup, and monitoring. Please note that Module 5 also covers some aspects of test administration. The assessment coordination timeline shows the activities needed in order to complete statewide assessment administration in the District of Columbia. The color and shape of each icon indicates who is performing each action, which is outlined on this slide and discussed on Module 0. Starting in Module 1, these icons appear in the top right corner of slides to indicate where in the coordination process these activities occur. You may find it helpful to have this timeline available for reference as you go through each training module. Each training module provides detailed information on the activities in the assessment coordination timeline. In this module, we will cover the steps highlighted in the orange dotted line: setup, testing environment, prepare and distribute testing materials, and administer statewide tests to students. We will now begin this section on test administration. IC's goal is to develop and provide statewide assessments that yield fair and accurate results. To do this, schools and local education agencies, LEAs, are to administer assessment in consistent and standardized conditions. The best way for us to support schools and LEAs in administering quality assessments is to ensure that educators understand and recognize acceptable and unacceptable assessment practices. We will now review setup of testing environments. To facilitate consistency and security during test administration throughout the district, it is essential that students only have access to the allowable testing materials outlined in the assessment manuals. Access to additional resources or tools is prohibited. All authorized personnel are responsible for ensuring that the testing environment is free of content that may provide students with an unfair advantage. There are non-permissible bulletin and wall displays. Wall displays with tested content or test-taking strategies must be removed or covered in testing rooms, hallways, stairwells, bathrooms, etc. throughout testing. Displays must be removed or covered prior to the first day of testing and remain removed or covered for the duration while the statewide assessments are being administered in your LEAs in schools. A typical learning environment may look like the one on this slide. To prepare for testing, non-permissible wall and bulletin displays will need to be covered or removed. Non-permissible bulletin and wall displays include any information regarding the content being assessed or test-taking strategies, including word walls and multiplication tables, and these items are prohibited in the testing environment. The test environment includes, but is not limited to, the testing room, hallways, stairwells, and bathrooms where students travel during the testing session. Such displays should be removed or covered prior to the first day of the statewide assessment administration and should remain removed or covered for the duration of active statewide assessment. In the instance that a student is taking the Access for L's or alternate access assessment, content is defined as English word translations from other languages or visual aids, conjugations of verbs from other languages, grammar and syntax rules, or any other English language arts writing strategies, vocabulary aids, or any other content or strategies that may assist a student in completing the reading, writing, listening, or speaking domains. Take a moment to consider what may need to be covered or removed from this image. Follow the general rule that if the material in question may help the student answer or find an answer, post or copy materials, it is not allowed in the testing environment. You may have noticed on the previous slide that there were multiple wall displays that could have been considered a test security violation. These include the math formula that was in purple, the steps to success that was in green, the student work bulletin board, the world history timeline, and the animal life poster. All of these are examples of non-permissible wall displays because they may include content related to what will be assessed or may be considered test-taking strategies. You also may have noticed that the desks on the previous slide were too close to each other. On this slide, desks are adequately separated to ensure test security. Note that the timing box that displays information about the unit testing time and the start and stop time should be present and visible to all students in the testing environment. Refer to the Test Administrator's Manual for additional information. Rather than remove these wall displays, as we say in the previous slide, it is also permissible to cover them as seen on this slide. Additionally, if desks are not able to be adequately separated as seen in the previous slide, desk dividers can be used to ensure students are unable to see the testing content of their peers. Both this slide and the previous slide are examples of secure testing environments where all non-permissible wall displays are not in view and students are adequately separated from each other during testing. Additional details on how to set up testing environments can be found in the Test Administrator trainings and/or manuals. Maintaining test security is an important factor when setting up a testing environment. The testing recommendations here serve as examples schools may consider, but do not represent an exhaustive list of room setup options. Special considerations may be required when assessing students with disabilities or English learners. Additional details regarding administrative conditions for students can be found in the Test Administrator manuals for each assessment. Please note that both MSAA and DLM assessments require one-on-one administration. While these recommendations apply broadly to in-school testing, schools and LEAs may have developed additional protocols to ensure the health and safety of students and staff in their buildings. School test coordinators and test administrators should adhere to their schools and LEAs' established protocols while making every effort to ensure the security of assessment content and a consistent testing experience for all students. As a reminder, tested content and test-taking strategies must be covered during testing. Schools may choose to uncover these wall displays during times when students are not testing. If you have a question about a particular wall display and if it is permissible during testing, please reach out to OSSE's Office of Assessments at osse.assessment@dc.gov for guidance. The next step that we will cover is to prepare and distribute testing materials. The school test coordinator is responsible for ensuring that test administrators and proctors know how to properly prepare and distribute testing materials. Some testing materials are intended for all students, while others are only provided to students with specific accommodations. If a student is provided with an accommodated material they are not eligible to receive, or they do not receive an accommodated material they require based on their 504, IEP, or EL plan, their test may be invalidated and require re-administration. If you discover that a test was administered with incorrect accommodations, you should stop the unit, immediately notify the appropriate authorized personnel per LEA policy, and submit an incident report to OSSI. Do not take further action, such as continuing to test or starting a new unit without direction from OSSI. Please take every precaution to avoid accommodation errors and the challenges they cause for students. Secure materials, which include testing tickets, test booklets, answer documents, etc., must be kept secure prior to distribution. When test administrators receive secure materials from test coordinators, a chain of custody form must be signed by both parties. The form must be signed again when the documents are returned and accounted for. When materials are destroyed, the test coordinator and a witness must sign the chain of custody form. Completed forms should be kept in the school test security file. Chain of custody forms can be found at the link provided in this slide. Cell phones and prohibited electronics. Cell phones may not be used in the testing environment by students, test administrators, or proctors. During the administration of paper-based tests, no cell phones may be in the testing environment at any point during testing. During the administration of computer-based tests, school test monitors and school technology coordinators may use cell phones for technical support. If a student's testing device experiences technical problems that prevents the student from normal continuation of testing, the test administrator must alert the school technology coordinator and the school test coordinator. All technical problems and delays which significantly impact the administration of the assessment must be reported and documented by the test monitor as an incident through the incident reporting portal. This slide lists prohibited materials for statewide content assessments, which include Part, DC Science, MSAA, and DLM. For English Language Arts and Literacy assessments, the following materials are prohibited in the testing environment: dictionary or thesaurus, any unauthorized resource or reference material that defines, explains, or illustrates ELA terminology or concepts, or otherwise provides unauthorized assistance during testing. Bilingual word-to-word dictionaries without definitions, phrases, sentences, or pictures are an allowable accommodation for English learner EL students. For mathematics assessments, the following materials are prohibited in the testing environment: mathematical formulas and conversion tables other than the grade-specific vendor-supplied material, mathematics reference sheets other than the grade-specific vendor-supplied material, any resources that define, explain, or illustrate mathematical terminology or concepts, or otherwise provides unauthorized assistance during testing. Non-approved or unauthorized calculators. Please consult the Test Administrator Manual and Accommodations Accessibility Manual for each assessment for complete explanations of allowable and prohibited materials during testing. Prohibited materials access. Bilingual word-to-word dictionaries are not allowed on any access test. The following are also prohibited: reading aloud test items or passages on the reading test, translating test items into a language other than English, reading test items in a language other than English, responding to test questions in a language other than English. Additional guidance can be found in the Access Test Manuals available on the WIDA website. Grade level appropriate calculators will be available in the test platform on calculator sections of mathematical units for computer-based tests. Students may use handheld grade appropriate calculators on calculator sections of assessments. No calculators are allowed on non-calculator sections except when specified by a student's IEP or Section 504 plan and documented as an accommodation. Test administrators must confirm that calculators' memories have been cleared prior to testing. Prohibited calculating devices. Calculators with college algebra system CAS features. Tables, laptops, or personal digital assistants, PDAs, or phone-based calculators, except those that are being used as devices for computer-based testing, and calculators and electronic devices with QWERTY keyboards, except where expressly mandated by an IEP or 504 section plan. Test integrity and accommodations. It is a violation of a student's rights and test integrity for a student to not receive the appropriate testing accommodations or to receive an accommodation to which they are not entitled. As a reminder, if you discover that a test was administered with incorrect accommodations, you should stop the unit, immediately notify the appropriate authorized personnel per your LEA policy, and submit an incident report to IC. Students need to be familiar and comfortable with all necessary accommodations before the assessment. Practice tests and tutorials are a useful resource. Any unique non-standard accommodations not included in the manuals for an assessment must be approved by IC prior to their use on statewide tests. An emergency accommodation form is available online for temporary accommodations in the event of a student injury, for example, a scribe for a student with a broken wrist. Unique non-standard accommodations. Individual statewide assessments may permit unique accommodations which require advanced approval from IC. LEAs may apply for a unique accommodation by completing the 2023 Unique Accommodation Request Form and submitting it via the IC Support Tool, OST. IC must approve the accommodation prior to use on the assessment. If schools allow students to bring their own permissible and specific unique accommodation materials, they must be given to the school test monitor or test administrator prior to testing to ensure that the tools are appropriate for testing. Example, tools do not have any writing or pre-stored information on them. The school test coordinator is responsible for ensuring that test administrators and proctors know how to properly prepare and distribute the appropriate testing materials for each testing session. All applicable authorized personnel should review the Test Administrator Manual, TAM, for additional instructions and administration requirements. Access for ELLs and alternate access. All paper-based materials should be stored in a secure location prior to testing. Test coordinators should provide test administrators with the following: test administrator script, test administrator manual, testing tickets, test roster, writing test booklets. MSAA. MSAA student materials are available online. Test administrators will have a testing ticket, the directions for test administration, DAT, and the assessment manual with them during testing. DLM. DLM test administrators will retrieve the testing information page, TIP, for the first testlet. Gather needed materials before beginning assessment. Go to the educator portal, then to Manage Tests, then select Test Management. They will also retrieve students' username and password from the educator portal. Then click the credentials icon in the Instruction and Assessment Planner to retrieve them. They are also located in the Test Management section of the educator portal. Go to Educator Portal, Manage Tests, then select Test Management. During the Park ELA assessment, all students should be provided with headphones, as some ELA units include text with audio or video content. Headphones are not needed for Park Math or DC Science assessment unless students have an accommodation or accessibility feature that requires them. Test administrators should be aware of all accommodations and accessibility features provided to students in their testing groups. Training for how to administer these accommodations or accessibility features should be provided in advance, and students should already be familiar with any tools or resources they will be using. Next, we will cover Administer Statewide Tests to students. All authorized personnel are required to maintain the security integrity of all testing materials, locations, and content during the testing window. Any deviations, breaches, or incidents must be reported to OSSE as soon as they are discovered. Additional information about reporting test security incidents can be found in Module 5 of this series, Test Administration, Prohibited Actions, and Incident Reporting. The following directives must be followed by all authorized personnel during test administration for all statewide assessments. Test administrators and proctors are to follow test security and administration guidance to securely administer assessments to students. All authorized personnel should refrain from committing prohibited actions during test administration. In instances where there are exceptional or special circumstances during the test administration, the school test coordinator must make a plan with OSSE to ensure that the test administration can continue. Every effort should be made to ensure that all students complete each unit or testlet of each assessment. A makeup window should be included in the testing schedule that is included in the school test security plans to accommodate students who were absent from testing during the initial test sessions. Makeup testing must be handled with the same level of care and security as all other test sessions, including the removal or covering of prohibited wall displays and materials, the use of the chain of custody forms, accounting for and locking away secure test materials, and shredding used scratch paper on a regular schedule. Test administrators' manuals should be provided to test administrators prior to testing so that they are able to review the details and prepare for the administration. During testing, test administrators must have a copy of the test administrators' manual with them. Test administrators must follow all directions provided in the assessment manual and reference it as needed throughout test administration. It is important to give kindergarten students taking the Access for ELLs and alternate access assessment some mild, positive reinforcement on the assessment. Refer to the test administrator script for acceptable positive phrases such as "good job" and "very good." These phrases may only be used for kindergarten students and only during the Access for ELs and alternate access assessments. MSAA is administered to individual students by a test administrator. The Directions for Test Administration, DTA, provides scripts and instructions and should be used throughout the testing process. DLM is administered to individual students by a test administrator. Begin by assessing students on the first testlet. As each remaining testlet becomes available, retrieve the TIP, gather materials, and assess the student. Use the test progress column in the educator portal on the test management screen to confirm that all tests are complete. Park and DC Science. Test administrators should be familiar with testing policies and scripts within the Park and DC Science Administrator Manual prior to the first day of testing. At the beginning of testing, test administrators must read the scripts in the Test Administrator Manual verbatim. If technical issues arise, the test coordinator or technology coordinator should be contacted for support. Test administrators should not view student content on the testing screen or troubleshoot technical issues occurring within the testing platform. Students should practice using the TestNav tools during a practice test prior to the first day of testing. Test administrators cannot explain how to use tools in the TestNav system during the test unless a direction is explicitly written in the testing script. Once students begin to take the test independently, the test administrators and proctors should circulate the room to monitor testing. They should not view student screens or engage with testing content. Conversations between authorized personnel and students during testing should only occur when they are essential and brief. We will now cover monitor and support staff during test administration. When technical support is needed, it is important that the test coordinators contact the assessment vendor. The test administrator or technology coordinator should provide the test coordinator with the error codes where applicable. Each vendor has a support hotline that is available during testing hours, which are found on this slide and on the Contact Us page of the OSSE Assessment website. For support with urgent incidents or policy questions, contact the OSSE Assessment Hotline at 202-304-3269. A printable document with all hotline support numbers is available online at the link provided. This information can also be found at the second link that is provided. LEA and school test coordinators are responsible for supporting authorized personnel during testing, and you should ensure that your staff know how they can reach you if support is needed during testing. A detailed description of your plan for supporting staff will be included in the school test security plan. LEA test coordinators who oversee multiple schools should plan to visit schools or virtually meet with school test coordinators during testing to provide support and to monitor the application of test security policies and procedures. As stated in the previous slide, OSSE's auditors will conduct in-person monitoring in the 2022-23 school year. OSSE auditors will not provide feedback or technical assistance during monitoring. OSSE's role is to observe and/or request information. Please provide OSSE's auditors with the documents they request and allow them to move freely throughout the testing environment once testing begins. This concludes Module 4 of this training series. You can now move on to Module 5, Test Integrity and Assessment Overview. If you have questions about OSSE assessment policies or specific assessment programs, feel free to use the information on this slide to reach out to the appropriate member of the OSSE team.